Hey guys, how you going? So today on BKR Sport season review time. You know it, we are absolutely pumping through every single team in the NRL and reviewing their season. The goods, the bads, the ugly, the not so bad. So how you going? So we're going through everything. Even a bit of positive for next year. Also labeling some concerns and saying where we think that potentially things may go wrong in the future or maybe going right. And we are starting to get to the better teams of the competition now, obviously. And now we're getting to the point where we need to wait for teams to get eliminated, realistically. Like, yes, we've got the Raiders and the Knights that we can already film. Yes, the Knights as well. And then also the doggy wolf. However, now we're starting to get to those real solid elimination finals where things are starting to get red hot, baby. Now, like I said, we are going through every single one of these teams. So if you have not already checked out the videos, firstly, hit that like and subscribe right now in this video. But we have already filmed for the Tigers, the Rabbitohs, the Eels, the Titans, the Warriors, the Broncos, the Dragons, and also the Dolphins. So, yeah, look, we've been absolutely slamming these down, so I hope you guys have been enjoying them. Obviously, if you have a different opinion or you have an opinion in general, please go into the comment section and let me know your thoughts. But today, we are here at the Canberra Raiders in the bing bong ding dong, right in the smackdown middle of the competition. Well, you could argue 9th and 8th are smack middle because obviously there is 17 teams, so it comes down to those two teams. But the Canberra Raiders, we are here for the Canberra Raiders who just missed out on points differential in 2024. They did not make the finals, but they did come home like a train. And I mean it when I say they came home like a train against some pretty damn well good opposition. Now, obviously, coming into this year, the Raiders were thought to really drop off. Last year, and we'll go back into 2023 here, just to kind of give a little bit of reminder, the Raiders did finish in the top 8 with a -137. Now, this is actually really interesting, right? Because they finished on 32 points, which obviously put them one extra win above where they were, which is what actually got them into the finals. Because if last year, if they hadn't got that one win and finished on the same points 30 as this year, then the Rabbitohs would have been above them on their +59 there compared to the -137. So coming into this year, you remembered last year and said the Raiders weren't that great. They weren't doing anything spectacular, but they just ground out results. I don't think they had a single 13+ win all season. They would only win games by really close margins, and then sometimes would get absolutely whooped and mundossed, which they did, which is why -137 there. So in 2023, it was an okay year for the Raiders, and then when they got into, actually, you know what, we'll even go here to the final round of 2023 when they got into the finals. They took on the Newcastle Knights and they lost in an absolute, actually quite a stellar game there, 30-28. And Newcastle, that was on their 10-game win streak, yeah? So this was actually a really impressive result there for the Raiders. But again, they didn't light the world on fire, the Raiders. Canberra have never lit the world on fire, maybe a few years ago in 2019 when they made the grand final. However, they just don't light the world on fire in regards to the players that they have and the way that Ricky Stewart, their coach, does want them to play like. And they're what they really try to encapsulate from within their club, which is hardworking, which is gritty, which is kind of, they are quite well known for having those English-style players, right? The forwards. Elliott Whitehead's a good example of that, right? When I think of Elliott Whitehead, when I think of Raiders, I think of guys like Elliott Whitehead who are consistent, who work hard for it, who are gritty, and will prove you wrong. And that's what I feel like the Raiders encapsulate. And in 2023, that's exactly what they did. They ground through the season, and they finally got into the promised land of the finals, obviously getting knocked out by a red-hot team at the time. And they took a lot out of the Knights, and you could argue that the Warriors were good and beat the Knights well the week after, but you can argue the Raiders actually really put the dagger into the Knights there as well, because they really made the Knights work hard for it, and that's why the Knights were so tired in New Zealand the following week. But let's get to this year, and everyone kind of had them in the bottom 4. I think I had them like 5th last. I think I had the Tigers last, Doggy second last too. Oh no, you maybe second last. I had the Dragons down there as well. I think Doggy's 3rd last, Dragons 2nd last, and I can't really remember. It might have been the Raiders in 4th last. So they have impressed based off of what most people were thinking, that some people had them for the wooden spoon as well. But again, it's a very, very similar year. It's only 10 points differential different to what they had in 2023, just with the one less win and the one more loss, which ultimately cost their season. So if they had have got just that one more win this year, they would have been in the finals and also would have been pretty much exactly the same team as they were in 2023. So they didn't improve. There was no overall collective improvement, it was just a flat line, which is what the Raiders are. They are just kind of that flatline team that will do their job. They're not the worst, but they're not the best. And I don't know how Raiders fans feel about that. I don't know how Canberra fans feel. Like, this Raiders team is not going to win the competition anytime soon with the way that they play, but they're also just not going to come last. And Ricky Stewart does know just how to get the most out of this, in my opinion. So let's go through the points differential, right? So they scored 474 points this year, which, when considering the Knights were the second worst attacking team in the competition, only by 7 points to the West Tigers down here, who came in last. So the Tigers scored 463 points. That was the worst attack in the comp. Then you have the Knights with 470, and then you had the Raiders with 474. So they were the third worst attacking team in the competition this year. And it was by about 14 points, obviously, next to the Titans, who ended up finishing exactly where they in 14th with both their attack and their defense. That's exactly where they are, 4th last and 4th last. So to be compared with them in the Raiders and compared with these other teams that are only 11 points better than the Tigers, that's an issue. That is a big issue, which is really the key marker of the season. But again, you also then go and have a look at the defensive system here of 601 points against, and the teams that were worse than them in this regard were the Tigers with 750, Rabbitohs, Eels, Titans, all significantly above where the Raiders were giving up points, by about 50 there for the Titans, the other one's like 100 and whatnot. And then you've also got the Dragons who get more points, and also the Broncos. Is anyone in the top 8? No. So even the Cowboys with their defensive woes still had a better defense than the Raiders. So that's an issue, because the Raiders are usually known for being that defensive team, but they were giving up a lot of points this year. So this is a polar difference. This is a very big polar difference here, and that's why their points differential was the 5th last. Their points differential was in 13th position of minus 127. Comparatively to that, they were worse than the Dragons. They were significantly worse than I'd say they're the same with the Dragons. Significantly worse than the Broncos, significantly worse than the Warriors. Close enough to these teams here in the Titans and the Eels, but then obviously these two teams here in the Tigers and the Rabbitohs, there's a reason why they finished in second last. So there's not a great deal that comes out of this that says there's a positive here for the Raiders going forward at the beginning and the middle part of the year. And we'll get into the draw in a second. They do come home like a train, as you can see here, form 3-2. I'm pretty certain they won their last 3 games in a row. I think that's out of their last 5. They won 3 in a row. It could be wrong, but they're just a weird team. They're a weird team because on their day, they are solid. So that's realistically all I can kind of go into here. They need to get back to their defensive strategy, which Ricky Stewart is so great for. Also, by the way, just want to throw it out there, the NRL admitted to one of these being a loss. Just want to throw that out there. They admitted it. It should be 11-13. Should be 11-13. Should be 11-13, which would have actually finished them in 11th position, and the Dolphins would have been 9th and the Dragons 10th. Just throwing it out there. You know it in GIO Stadium. You know it. NRL came out and said that should have been a penalty for the Gold Coast, but let's not get into the Titans too heavily here. But you guys know I'm a Titans fan, so obviously I do relate a lot with my team and whatnot. And I don't forgive you, Ricky. You're out of this world, son. But there you go. So when you look at the ladder, you can understand why they didn't make the top 8, because their attack wasn't good, their defense wasn't good, comparatively to the Knights, whose attack wasn't good, but their defense was a lot better. Because the Knights' defense was better than Manly, was better than the Cowboys up there, and it wasn't a crazy deal behind, even arguably the Storm. It's only about 50-60 odd behind the first place team there. Obviously, the Panthers were the best defense and had a significantly better one there, in about 115, 120 odd there. But overall, the Raiders just they didn't do enough, but they were just off the mark. They're just such a strange team, man. It's just such a strange team because their defense can be so good on its day. It can be so good on its day. So let's go through their draw and try and figure out this mess here, right? So we'll get to these last 3 games, which is an impressive final 3 games. But again, you left it too late. You left it too late. It was an unfortunate one, but you left it too late. But all right, so we go back to round 1 here. And they start off the season really, really well, actually, in their first 2 games. Against the Knights, they win 28-12, and also against the Tigers, they win 32-12. only give up 12 points there apiece is actually really good, especially in McDonald-Jones Stadium in Newcastle. That's an impressive one here, especially considering they're the ones that actually ended up, just finishing above the Rays this year. So they got the season to a good start and also beat the Tigers. Now, this one, the Tigers, it's a bit of a whoop-de-doo. Now, when I refer to other teams, the Knights aren't that significant of a team to beat, I would personally say. But when it comes to the Raiders, it is a very important part of their season. They have to beat this team. Do they go and beat them again at some point? Do they go and beat them again? No. And that's the issue. That's a big issue, right? So let's go back up here and start again, because that's getting ahead of ourselves, but that's the point, right? The Knights and Raiders are so integral to each other's season, especially here for Canberra, because that's exactly where these two teams finish, right next to each other, and points differential-wise. Okay, so the first two games is fantastic. Then you get down to round 3 and 4, and they take on teams. In hindsight, Warriors isn't a big deal. But back then, they're coming off a preliminary final. They're coming off the heartbreaking loss to the Sharks and the really heartbreaking loss there of the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne. And the Warriors get their first win of the season. That's a bit of an issue. It's a significant issue because the Warriors were absolutely down in mentality. But they utilised the Raiders, a team that were expected to be easier beats, and were expected to drop off this year. The Warriors utilised the Raiders as a bounce-back game. And you don't want teams to think of you as a bounce-back game. And that's exactly what the Warriors would have been thinking. That's exactly what they would have been thinking. So that's not a great result there, especially after you start off the season 2-0. But in the context of everything, they're definitely winnable games, those first two. And then, they go and lose to the Sharkies 36-22, giving up 36 points there. The Sharks at this point were undefeated, I believe. They started off the season really, really strongly. So really mixed open first 4 rounds. Win-win, expected-ish. Loss-loss. At that point of the year, not necessarily expected. I'm okay with that one, to be fair. But then they obviously go and bounce back here against the bottom of the squeals. 41 points to 8. That is a whopping win against an Eels team that was expected to be better this year. I know they came third last, with the potential to come wooden spoon in the last round, but they didn't. That's the point. You don't think of what could have happened. They obviously did not finish in last, but there was a chance, but that's not the point. So they go and get a whopping win there, which is impressive. And then this one was a real concern as well for the Raiders, because obviously it was 2020, extra time. There was a very controversial call the NRL admitted fault for that should have let the Titans have a penalty from right in front in extra time, right? Now, that didn't happen. They went up the other end of the field and scored a late field goal to win this game 21-20. But the issue was the Titans had not won a game at that point of the year. And I know the Titans started to move along from that Cowboys game to the Raiders game, and then obviously eventually got that win against the Warriors in a couple of rounds' time. But you could see the up and down nature of Canberra at this point, where they can go and get a big win here against the Knights, a big win here against the Tigers, lose to a team that hadn't won yet, a pretty solid enough win there, loss against the Sharkies, a massive win against the Eels, a close win against the Titans that arguably should have been a loss, and then go get thumped 34-10 by the Broncos, go get thumped by the Sharks 40-0 at home, mind you, and then go and win against Manly, who are a top 8 team and a pretty good team this year, going into the bye. So from their first 9 rounds, you can already see that up and down nature, the fluid motion of we can win, we can lose, we can win, we can lose. But when you're winning, the only times you get into the really, really big thumpings are against, I guess this is close enough, but big thumping Tigers, they came last. Big thumping Eels, they came third last. This team came fourth last and was only by 1 point. So it's just such a fluid motion, man. Like, how do you win that, but you go and get thumped 40-0 here? That's at home, and this is at Brookvale in Manly. So this is just up and down, and we'll go have a look now. We'll go after round 10, so inclusive of the bye. We will include the bye here. After round 10 this season, the Raiders were sitting in 7th position. So they're just flatlining. It is just a flatline. That's obviously a better position because they're in the finals, but they're just flatlining because they finish only 2 spots lower. Only 2 spots lower. So after 10 rounds of the season, you already know that you're going to be in this area. You're not going to be fighting for the top 4 up here, and you're not going to be fighting for the bottom 4 down here, but you are going to be fighting for this top 8 contention. And it's like, as a NRL fan, right, as a fan, do you just want to be a part of the conversation and just want to be competitive, or do you want to win the competition? And I think that's the biggest issue that I'll get to with the Canberra Raiders eventually in this video, is what is your direction? What is your goal? Because it just is too fluid at the moment, and there does need to be changes based on the fact that there is no significant improvement. There is just a bottom line flat line. Not a bottom line, sorry, a midline flat line. Again, you're not the worst, you're not the best. There's no changes. Youngsters coming through. We'll get into the signings and all that type of stuff in a sec. But after 10 rounds, very, very flat line through the middle. Then you get here. This is a big win. This is a big win here against the Doggies. Because the Doggies are a very good defensive team. This was at Magic Round. Very close game. I would say that's one of the better wins for the Raiders throughout the season because of how quality the Dogs were in 2024. And I'm looking forward to doing the Bulldogs review because there will be some really good results for them as well. So I think that's a really big positive there at Magic Round. And then guess what? They flatline again and get absolutely thumped by the Roosters. So what you're seeing here is the Raiders are getting close wins against good opposition. They are. So they're just off the mark. But they're also still capable of getting flogged. They're still capable of getting slapped. Their home record, actually, let's have a look at this. From round 12, because that's at home again. So, home record, they beat the Tigers, they're 1-0. Beat the Eels, 2-0. Arguably beat the Titans, 3-0. Lost to the Sharks, so they're 3-1. So they started off the season fantastic time, 3-1. That's not a home game. That's Suncorp Stadium. And this is 3-2. So they started off the season 3-0 and then just started to slip down at home. And I feel like the later the season goes as well, they do actually lose more games at home. I could be wrong there. Let's get into it. But this is such a polar opposite result there. Because the Roosters defensively aren't that great, but attacking-wise are fantastic, which is what you're seeing there with the 44 points. And the Raiders did score enough points. 16 points is good enough in regards to a poor defensive team down the Roosters. So, and in this game, 24 points against arguably I think it was top 3 the Bulldogs came in regards to defense this year. And at that point, probably would have been like top 2 or something like that. I don't know. So that's a really, really positive result. And then also, so 3 games here against top 8 position by the end of the year. Oh no, sorry, the Dolphins didn't. They came 10th. But at this point of the year, I remember when I did the Dolphins review, they were quite high up. I think they were like 6th and still in the fight for a top 4 spot. Right? So these 3 results is bang, bang, bye. Comes at the right time. And then slapped again. Oh no, that's going to be its own little area. So this is not a bad period. Despite this Roosters result, that is not a terrible period. 3-1 inclusive of a bye gets you back in the hunt. Alright, gets you back in the hunt. But this is just an awful period for the Raiders. Wowee. This is where your season was lost. Right now, the middle point of the year, this is where your season was lost. And I don't really understand it. Now, I also want to clarify. I understand Jamal Fogarty got injured. He was doing well at the beginning of the year, was out for a long portion, came back late. So obviously, you need that kind of decisive decision-making playmaker in the halfback. You can't really go for the youngsters there at the moment because your team really does rely upon Jamal Fogarty. Because this period here, I don't believe he's playing. Let me just quickly clarify here. Let's click on this Tigers game, look at this team list. I don't believe he's playing. Who are your halves? Your halves were Kyle Weeks and Ethan Strange. So 2 extremely young, developing options there. Yeah, so this is a big key point to this part of the season. This is a key point. So I will give you this. But after going 3-1 inclusive of a bye, you get whooped by the Cowboys there, again, at home. So I think that's probably, 3-3 now at home. You get absolutely annihilated by the Tigers, 48-24. I don't know how that has happened. 48 points given up to the Tigers is outrageous. Then you only give up 16 points to the Storm and lose 16-6. You then lose to the Knights, 16-12, which is a key part of the year, as I said before, and then you get the bye again. Your byes are actually separated quite nicely here. I won't say that your byes are in a bad position. I actually like where your byes are, comparably to teams like the Titans, as I've said before, that get all their byes at the beginning part of the year, and then they just have to be consistent throughout the rest of the year. So the only points that you receive from those 5 rounds after going a pretty good 2-1 here against some pretty good opposition, the only points you got was from a bye. In these 4 rounds, you just lost. Slapped there by the worst team in the competition. Beaten enough there. And then this game here is arguably, you know what? You scored 24 points here. This could be a big argument to say this is why you didn't make the finals as well. Because you have to be beating the Tigers. If you consider yourself a top 8 team and you want to be competitive on a significant level, you want to be able to win the competition, you want to be able to really, cause a scene, cause a ruckus, you need to win that game. Because you were 1 game short of making the finals. 1 game. because you equaled the Knights, but your points differential was awful, so you need to go and win that game. And that all comes down to the way you lost these big-time games, right? So I would make an argument that this is a key part of your season right now. This 4-game stretch is the most important part of your year. That is the most important part and is a telltale sign as to why you are not in the finals, in the eliminations. Because this team is the one that beat you out because they equaled with a better points differential and you gave them a freebie 2 points. They were not a freebie 2 points, but again, another loss at home. Another loss at home. So what? Now they're 3-4. So they started off the season 3-0 at home. Now they're what, 3-4? This is, that's the period of the season where your season was Gonski. Because then you get your bye. That's great. And then you realise with like 7 rounds to go that you need to get a damn well move on, babe. You need to get a damn well move on because of that points differential. You need to get a move on. So you go and beat the Warriors. That's great. Whatever. And then you go and beat the Rabbitohs. Another kind of whatever because we knew they were, second last at the time or third last. You get beaten by the Doggies at home. This is actually a pretty good performance by the Raiders. I actually think this was somewhat of a win mentally for Canberra. I do. I know that it's a win for the Dogs and they were the better team. But the Raiders gave it a good go against a team that was still fighting for the top 4 at that point. A very good defensive team at Belmore. Really, really strong crowd there. I would say mentally that's actually not too bad of a result there for the Raiders. And then obviously, so that 3-game stretch after the bye is fantastic, in my personal opinion. It's a fantastic point. And it gets that momentum rolling again. It gets that momentum to say, you know what, we can still make the finals. Let's chug home strong. Let's get home hard. And let's do it because we can. And that's exactly what that showed. But again, this was against the Rabbitohs and also the Warriors. This is the result. This is the game that was a really, really tough one compared to those two. With that being said, obviously you still lost it. But I still think it was a good result for you. And then you fall apart again to these big-time teams. So I'm going to put these 2 games together and say conceding 88 points is... I don't need to say it's an issue. It simply is an issue, right? And again, this is another big point of the year. I would still say that 4-game stretch was the most crucial. These 2 teams aren't exactly... it's not like they're not winnable against, right? But with the points differential throughout the entirety of the year, leading up to the Cowboys, you can understand why the Cowboys put some points past them and the Raiders did not score many points, even though the Cowboys team defensively are not good at all. So the Raiders definitely should have been scoring more than 4 points there. More than 4 points. And this result makes a lot of sense in regards to how Manly play. So that's unfortunate and expected. However, you're in the top 8 battle. And it's not expected based on these last 3 rounds. Because you have possibly the most difficult last 3 rounds that any team could have asked for this season. Possibly the most difficult. Right? Maybe the Broncos, but no, I would still say that this is the most difficult part. Well, so far that I've seen through these season reviews, these are the most difficult 3 games. And I will include the Dragons here. So to lose these 2 games by massive margins and then to go and beat the Panthers at home too, which you don't have a good record in, beat the Roosters away, 2 top 4 teams, and then beat the Dragons, who I know the week before this, they lost 44-40 to the Eels, which was just horrific. But the point is that this is a terrific way to get into the year. But it was too little too late. It was too little too late. Like, what, you need the motivation for that? You should have had the discipline throughout the season to make this worthwhile, because that deserves a top 8 finals finish. It does. It deserves a top 8 finals finish. And I know you needed the Dolphins and the Knights to draw for you to make it in, which obviously wasn't going to happen. But that is an unreal way to finish the season. So it gives you that hope into next year. But it's confusing. It's really, really confusing how, especially these 2 games, this was a good enough team. So I'm happy to throw it in. But especially these 2 games. To win those 2 games, you deserve to be in the finals. If you can beat the Panthers and you can beat the Roosters, 1 at home and 1 away, you deserve to be in the finals. Simple as that. Simple as that. So that's why I look back at this. That's why I look back at conceding 48 points to a Tigers team that came last for the 3rd year in a row. I might even remove this. The key loss for you this season was this one. Round 16, the West Tigers prevented you from making the finals. They prevented you from making the finals. Because I will reiterate, if you beat the Roosters away and the Panthers at home, you deserve to be in the finals. So it comes down to your own I don't know, lack of discipline against a team that you should have easily beaten. You might have come into that game thinking you were going to get an easy win. I don't know. But you should have been in the finals based on that. So I don't know if that hurts you or not. But you did everything you could late on. You just set yourself up for a little bit of failure from that middle part of the year. The 4-game stretch and that Tigers game. So let's go now and have a look at the contract situation. So we've got a player option here of Harawa and Nara. We've got a mutual option with Chevy Stewart. A lot of options here. Mutual option with Hoheba Peru, Jamal Fogarty, club option in 2026. Player option here, Tarpany. It's an issue, but that's later on down the track. You have to think about it now. Another option here for Matty Tomoko in the back 2 years of his contract. So there's quite a few options here. This is the big one, but then again, I don't know how old Tarpany actually is. Actually, let's quickly see if it just shows his age right now. So we go to profile of Joseph Tarpany. He's literally born on my birthday. We're myself and Joey Tarpany. We're 4th of May 1994. We are the exact same age. That's my birthday to the dot. There you go. So he's 30 years old. So that doesn't matter too much in that regard. That's cool as. I didn't know that I had the same birthday as Joey Tarpany. And again, 1994 as well. It's not like it's, 4th of May 1999. We're both the exact same age. But all right. So yeah, player option. That's in 3 years' time, because obviously this year's already happened. In 3 years' time from here, so he'll be 33 player option. That's fine. It's not too big of an issue there. And Matty Tomoko, we'll quickly go have a look at his age there as well. 2000, so he's 23 going 24. There's a couple of options later on in his contract as well. So that might cause a little bit of an issue. But overall, you look at a lot of these guys, and they do have quite long-term contracts, which is good, which is really good for them, especially Chevy Stewart, who is young. Corey Horsford's still got a few years left in his contract. Elliot Whitehead is obviously getting on now. Dane Levi getting on now. And shouldn't really be your starting 9, in my personal opinion. Shouldn't really be the guy you rely upon, but he's a hard worker. Ethan Strange, massive long-term contract. You love that because he's a good player and very young. You love that. Hudson Young, another really good player. You love that for the 4 years, or the 3 extra years. This one might be an issue at the end of next year, but I think he'll crack on as long as the club obviously wants it. These two I'm okay with. Obviously, Rapana has been great, but he's getting on now. Joey Tarpany, like I said, that's fine. You've got plenty of time, and he'll be 33 by the end of that. Josh Papali'i is getting on now. Okay, Weeks, you got to start thinking about it. And he's a good player coming through. He is a good player. Morgan Smith is fine. Kotrich, I think you're probably going to go a different direction, but you've got the option there if you want to give him some more. And yeah, I'm okay with your contract situation. This one, I think you need to start really thinking about, because that's obviously next year, so we can start talking from November 1st. Also, guys, this is the NRL.com website. If it's wrong and there's been additions, losses, and also updates, then please do let me know in the comment section. But I'm just going based off this. Hosking, obviously, I want to see him play more, and he will get more time now that Elliot Whitehead is going. So yeah, look, I think the contract situation at the Raiders is pretty good. I think that they'd be pretty happy with this overall. Now, development list-wise, Adrian Trevelyan this year and Jordan Martin this year. Heard of both of those guys. Don't know a great deal about him, but with that being said, they know more about the development than I do, of course. Noah Martin, Michael Asamoah, and Vena Patuki Kase, who have a few years. In regards to the development list, again, I've heard of those 3. Haven't really heard of these 2, so I can't really speak on them. I think based off of what I know, then it's not the most impressive of development list there. But then again, the Raiders and Canberra are quite a individual team, very individual kind of team where you don't know a great deal about, but then when they do come in, they just play well, right? So I do think that this development list is probably going to be good. It probably is, but I don't know a great deal about it. So we're going to move past that. I would say, though, that when it comes to development lists, you want to see hype. You want to see people talking about them, getting really loud. But again, Canberra's not a team, because Canberra's segregated from the big cities of Sydney, Brisbane, Goldie, Melbourne, the likes of New Zealand. The point is that you don't really hear a fantastic amount coming from within. So you'll never really know if this is that great or not. But Ethan Strange came through and did well. I'm just saying. So keep an eye on it. Now, in regards to 2024 gains coming into this year, Simi Sasungi from the Knights, KO Weeks from the Manly Seagulls, Morgan Smithies from the Wigan Warriors, and Zach Hosking for the Panthers. I think that for the Raiders' style of play, this is a great signing off season. I think that Simi Sasungi has done his job there. KO Weeks has been a huge addition this year, especially with Fogarty being out and whatnot, and we have seen some good play out of him. Wasn't going to get too much of an option there with the Manly Seagulls. Morgan Smithies has been a tackle bot, defensive machine there, coming from Wigan Warriors, which again, the English that I was talking about, that's their style, and I loved that signing there. I thought that he was really good for them. And Zach Hosking started off the season with a bang. Elliot Whitehead was the starting back rower, also the captain, so you can understand why he wasn't starting a great deal, but he's a good signing. So I liked this gains. I think that really benefited the style of play that Canberra do attribute themselves to. Then you go to the losses. Jack Whiten, huge loss there to the Rabbitohs. Matt Frawley to the Leeds Rhinos. Jared Croker obviously retired. Clay Webb to the Knights New South Wales Cup. And Harley Smith-Shields to my boys, the Gold Coast Titans. Jack Whiten adjusted this team dramatically based on the fact that they have used him for so long. He's been that player they rely upon, whether it was originally fullback, I think it was, and then also in the 5'8", helped get them to the 2019 grand final. However, I did think it was time. I did think this was an okay loss because I don't think that he was going to be able to... It just seemed like his stay was overstayed. It's not like he overstayed his welcome, is what I'll say. I just feel like they both need to go in a better direction. Jack Whiten went to Rabbitohs thinking they could win a comp. Obviously didn't happen. But maybe next year we'll see. Comparatively to staying at Canberra where it just was that flat line, yeah? So they needed to just spruce it up and go for the youngsters, and that's what they did. That's what they did there. So, and I like it because you got to unearth Ethan Strange. So this worked out, and I thought that was okay at the time. That's fine. Obviously, he was a great player, but retired. That makes sense. Clay Webb, not too sure about. And Harley Smith-Shields was more of a depth option for you guys. It was more of a depth option and got injured quite a lot at the Titans, unfortunately. So, but I would have liked to have seen more from him. But I think that that's all fine in regards to the losses. 2025 gains, Ethan Sanders from the Eels. Interesting. Miles Martin from the Knights and Sevelia Tamale from the Dragons. While the losses, Elliot Whitehead to the Catlins Dragons and Nick Cottridge to the Catlins Dragons. So Catlins Dragons picking up a couple of their older players there. Okay with this and okay with this. I don't think this dramatically changes your team, except for the fact that it does bring a lot more of a newer, fresher style comparatively to the old guard, which is what Cottridge and Elliot Whitehead were. So I do think this is a good sign from the Raiders that they are trying to go in a new direction, and they are trying to, yes, use that English talent that they've always been known for in the forwards, and yes, also still kind of use that gritty style, but... With that being said, they don't need to go and pick up big-name players, as you can see here, and not many big-name players wouldn't necessarily want to go to Canberra. However, I do think this is actually quite okay losses. I think that it shows Canberra are trying to adjust for the better. They're trying to adjust for the better, right? Rather than just flatline, which is the big key word that I'm saying throughout this. And in regards to the gains, they've got plenty of halves. Unless they're playing to kind of slow Fogarty down... You know, they've got Ethan Strange there, who is pretty much similar to Ethan Sanders there, but obviously I back in Ethan Strange a little bit more. This was at the beginning part of the year. Surprised the Eels let him go, to be fair. But, you know, they wanted to go for two youngster, add in another depth option in the youngster halves department that can develop long-term, maybe. But you've also got KO Weeks there that you're potentially looking at as well. I don't know. I'm okay with it, though, because he is a good talent. I just don't know how he fits into this Raiders team at the moment. I don't know how he does. Miles Martin, I don't know a great deal about, and Sevelia Tamale, I've heard his name from the Dragons. So they're obviously just going young is what I would assume there. Again, I don't know much about Miles Martin. I think Semelio is quite young. Sanders is quite young, and I would assume Miles Martin is quite young as well. So this is just development for the future. And again, that's what Canberra Raiders are doing right now. They're not focusing and relying upon the old guard. They are trying to adjust for the future. So this is, overall, last year's gains and losses to this year's gains and losses. I do think Canberra are going in the correct direction. I do. I think they're going in the correct direction to adjust. I think adjusting is key here to prevent the flat line. Flat line. And with Canberra, though, they don't necessarily always have the biggest stars. The biggest stars, you know, like your Nathan Cleary's, your Tommy Trbojevich's, your Cameron Munsters, you know, all these kind of guys, they don't necessarily have them. Jamal Fogarty is not a big name star, but he does really well for the Raiders. He's not unbelievable, but he will do his job at a good level, right? And you go and have a look at all these other players across their team. They're not necessarily massive stars, but damn, they work hard under Ricky. Damn, they work hard under Ricky, and that's why they're just constantly there, even if they don't have the greatest team, which does give you a positive benefit for the future that, let's go back to round 27 here. it does give you a positive benefit for the future that this Raiders team can go from this 9th position into that top 8 because they do their job at a solid level when they don't have the stars, which means that, bang, if they get a good star or they do find the right rhythm and they do find the right new direction, they're going up. They'll go up. Everyone's going to say to you the Raiders are going to drop because they say it every year. But they're a confusing team because, right, they could drop. Don't get me wrong, they could drop. Ricky is always under the microscope for if he should be their coach and whatnot. I don't think they'll fire him. I think he'll have to leave for anything like that to happen or a mutual termination kind of deal. I don't believe the Raiders will get rid of him because he is a good coach, despite history saying that it's very up and down with Ricky. But I do think that Canberra have the ability, if they get it right next year, to do something special and get up into this area. And I'm talking 3, 4, 5, 6 area. Not 1, 2, but 3, 4, 5, 6. I do think that under their new direction, maybe it might not be next year, maybe it might be 2026, but they are developing those young players. And then it'll be how they handle the Jamal Fogarty situation once he gets to the back end of his contract. And then I think it was the club option that the Raiders did have there on Jamal. Yeah, club option 2026. So they can decide next year if they do want to go with the Sanders / Strange / KO Weeks approach rather than the Jamal Fogarty plus one of those 3, which is more than likely going to be Ethan Strange. So I can see the direction that the Canberra Raiders are trying to achieve. I can see what they're trying to do. Now it's just about implementing it and also making sure the development is done right, which is what Ricky Stewart knows how to do. He knows he's one of the best coaches in the game for knowing how many minutes you should play and not overdoing you, but not underdoing you. Like he knows the game, Ricky, right? And although I may not be a big fan of his personality and the way that he talks shit about other teams publicly on the big time level, you know, like we call it like having a crack at the Titans for cheating when obviously the Raiders were the ones who officially got done for being offside after the game, right? So it was really interesting to be called cheaters for that. But that's not the point. Point is, the Raiders, my biggest things, I can see the direction. They are moving past the old guard. It's just about implementing these young stars into the rhythm and routine that Canberra are so good for. And Canberra's so good for getting solid results regardless of the team on paper. Now it's just about implementing those bigger name players, the bigger name players within your club, to really take that next step and drive you forward. Because there is an opportunity for you to go from 3 to 6. From 9th to 3 to 6. You've been flatlining. I don't believe you go down, but there is the chance there that you go down just based on those names on paper. And because they're also quite young right now. But I'm pretty excited about what the Raiders potentially could do. I'm pretty excited what the Raiders could potentially do. But I think that's all we need to really say here. I don't think Canberra fans are probably expecting me to be as positive about their team based off of this. I don't believe so. But I was. Because I can see it. I can see it. Right? So guys, obviously, if you have a different opinion to me, whether you agree with it, disagree with it, slightly agree, slightly disagree, please comment below. Let me know about your thoughts about Canberra. Do you think that I'm off my rocker or on another planet, as Ricky would say, and that the Raiders are going down and they aren't in a good position going forward? Or do you agree with me that they are in a pretty good position going forward as long as they develop and implement the right kind of strategies to suit their team and their nature in Canberra? Let me know. I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready to hear it all. But obviously, guys, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new around here. That's the bottom 9 done. It's the bottom 9 done. We've got the top 8 teams to go now. As you can see, the positivity is starting to rise there. So, yeah, very interesting there. We've absolutely slapped those down. Go and check those videos out if you haven't already for the other 8 teams in the bottom 9. But there you go. Like I said, thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Catch you later. See ya.